Hi, my name's Scott the Miniature Maniac, and today we're getting started on one of my Crystal Brush entries for 2019. Recently, someone on Facebook said, you know, Scott, why don't you paint miniatures anymore on your channel? And I was like, I haven't had a video painting a miniature on my channel in a long time, and the reason why is because I can't seem to paint a miniature in a week and produce a video on it. And since of that weekly release schedule, I have to opt for other topics that are easier to accomplish in a week. But I can't just not ever paint miniatures. So I put a poll out on my YouTube community asking, hey, would you mind if I split a miniature project into parts? And everyone was like, yep, that's fine, you do you. And I was like, you guys are awesome. I'm truly blessed to have followers that are very go with the flow. And this series is going to be the result of that poll. I also want to try something a little bit different with the format of the video. I find that a lot of my videos are retroactive in that I do something and then I talk about what I did. For this video, I really want to make it a point to do every single step along with you, the audience, telling you what's going on in my head, showing you when I make mistakes, telling you why I make my decisions, so on and so forth. Now, some of you may have the question, God, why are you starting your intro so early? I imagine most of you don't actually sound like that. And to that, I would say I'm just kind of taking my own advice here and starting early. I want to do maybe 2 to 3 entries for Crystal Brush this year as opposed to the one that I normally do, and I want to just get ahead of the game so that when it comes to the tail end of the year, I can maybe squeeze in another project or two. Now, in the past, I haven't gotten any placements for Crystal Brush, and my buddy John got an award the first year that he entered, and I can't let that schmuck beat me, now can I? So the first piece we're gonna be working on is my fantasy entry, and let me tell you where it all started. So I was browsing Instagram, and I found an illustration from a person that I follow called Revolting Worship, and it was a woman being hung and you couldn't see her face. It was super dehumanizing and it made you feel icky, and I love things that make you feel icky. So I'm not sure how I went from that picture to the idea in my head, but the idea in my head was like, what if you had a witch being burned at the stake, or maybe even crucified on a burning cross? But instead of that person having sorrow or pain on their face or fear, they're happy.
They're maniacally happy.
I thought that could be a really interesting idea, and it would definitely make you feel kind of repulsed a little bit in a way. I think that should be the metric for whenever I do a display piece. Does this repulse people? That's a pretty good idea, I think. So before we design a base, we need to understand the rules that we need to exist in. And one thing that's kind of annoying about Crystal Brush, they don't release their rule set until maybe 1 or 2 months before the actual competition is supposed to be judged. So what people generally do is they'll look at the rules from the previous year, follow those, and then just hope to God that they don't change them in a drastic way. So for a single figure in the fantasy category, the mini needs to be 25 mil to 40 mil in scale, and it can't be on a base no larger than 60 millimeter in diameter, and also the height can be no larger than 75 millimeter. It's interesting they don't have an XY for like a square base, so I guess we'll just go with the circle base then.
Who's a good baby? Goo.
Now, it's important to keep in mind that a lot of the judges don't really stick to the rules that tightly. People take their entries and put it in different categories if they feel like they can't compete with their category they're in. They'll disobey height rules and other kinds of rules. So these rules are really just loose guidelines, not necessarily any kind of rigid thing that's going to stop you from taking a piece to Crystal Brush. And that being said, better safe than sorry. Maybe one year they decide to change their policy and actually enforce rules in a rigid way. That'd be really bad if you decided to be a little bit lax with it. You'd kind of get screwed. If I get one comment about mowing my goddamn lawn, you're all done. So let's go to the drawing board and see if we can design up some interesting display bases. So very often when I'm coming up with a color scheme or trying to come up with some kind of scenic base, I always try to come up with a story. And that story then motivates the decisions that I make, and they might seem more natural because they're all being motivated by the same thing. So when a town finds out that someone in their midst could potentially be a witch, I try to imagine how they might react. And what I might think they would do is take the witch out into the woods and burn her there, away from their city, because maybe it's taboo to kill a witch in your city. And so they go out and find a pine tree and strip all the limbs off and tie her to it and burn her there. So it's amidst the forest. There are pine needles on the ground. The tree she's roped to has no arms because it was just freshly shaven off. Also, I'm the best face drawer in the world. And my other idea is maybe the townspeople wanted to kill her rightly. Maybe the priests ordained some kind of thing and blessed some crosses and they crucified her right in the town square. And this kind of actually allows for an interesting base idea. I could have the fronts of buildings be the walls of my diorama, and I could do something kind of like a rhombus where the thing is angled out more than it is square, and I could have a bunch of fun detail on the buildings. Maybe in the background I could even have like a burnt cross that whoever was on it is now gone. They turned into dust because they're already dead. And that would imply that this is not the first witch they've killed today, or maybe in the past week, and that there are several trials that have been going on. I think too I like the one where the witch is actually being crucified a little bit more because of the interesting ways that we can actually block in the setting. But the only problem is that I'm not sure how big this can be according to Crystal Brush's rules, so let's ask a judge. Okay, so Jen said it can be a 60mm square or irregular shape. The square base has a larger area than the same millimeter round, but since they're conventionally the same size for gaming, we accept it. For an irregular shape, it can be a maximum width. Okay, so maximum width, 60mm for an irregular shape. So let's sketch out the town idea. Okay, so originally I made a rhombus and came in a full millimeter on both sides, and it seemed like the design was too cramped. The buildings would never be this close to a witch burning for fear of catching on fire themselves. Maybe reality isn't always the most important thing. Maybe this is just an interpretation of reality. So I'm not sure if that's the biggest deal. Now I could just use thinner material for the walls, and that would also just be okay, and that would give me more room and also bring the sides in. Also, I thought of a cool idea for the back facade to be a church. You know, kind of more of those themes of religion kind of being worked into this with the crucifixion and all stuff like that. I also thought of a pretty good working title, Homecoming. I really like this idea. I really like the rhombus. I think it leads you to the scene in the middle. So I think I'm just gonna try it, and if it's too small, then I'll just restart with a different idea. Now we need to do the difficult thing, which is find the right miniature. I have a basic set of requirements. It needs to be female, it needs to have a maniacally happy face, and preferably it needs to have a dress, and also limbs that are posable into a come at me bro pose. I didn't even know where to start, so I actually reached out to my Discord community, and one of my community members, Jake, put me on the right track with Malifaux. I had completely forgotten about Malifaux, but Malifaux is definitely the right place to start. All kinds of zany, crazy things in that range. There's a local guy in my area I know who is an absolute Malifaux nut and knows all about their range. So I sent my list of requirements over to him, and he gave me a few ideas, and he churned out one that was right on the money, and that's Bête Noire. This model is female, she has a dress, it's long and flowy, her hair is long and flowy, and her hair is maniacal. There's only one problem with this miniature. It's so f***ing small. It's a 28 to 32mm scale model, and it's true scale. The hands are tiny, the face is tiny, the body itself is tiny. Unlike heroic scale models that have exaggerated features in larger heads, larger hands, and larger feet. My only concern is I'm not gonna be able to demonstrate good proper paint technique on something so tiny. But usually when I'm unsure of things, I just say screw it, let's go ahead and find out what happens. That's what we're gonna do. I'm pretty excited to get started on this project. It's been a while since I've put maximum effort into a miniature project. Moose is also pretty excited. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to support the channel, I have a Patreon account with a bunch of fun rewards. I have a merchandise store that sells merch like this patch right here. Both things linked in the description below. subscribe or die, and most importantly, don't forget to